Welcome back, everybody, to Toronto Today here on the Parlay. I'm your host, Luca Rosano, alongside my co host, Michael Singh. And we got a lot to get to in this show. We got a bunch of Maple Leafs trades to talk about that happened this past weekend. We got some Maple Leafs defeats to talk about. They were blown out against the Canadians last night. They'll be in action again tonight against the Blue Jackets. Then we're going to talk about the NBA All-Star game and focus in on Scotty Barnes, Achua, and Fred VanVleet, who not only played in the three-point contest, but he played in the actual All-Star game. And then we're going to get to our best bet of the night. So, Mike, it was a busy weekend. Well, let's start with the Leafs trades. A big one happened on Saturday. The Leafs getting that much-needed defenseman.
Yeah, so the Leafs obviously acquiring on Saturday night during the game, by the way. They decided to make this trade official. The Leafs acquired forward Ryan Dzingel and defenseman Ilya Lyubushkin in exchange for Nick Ritchie and Arizona's choice of Toronto's either third round pick in 2023 or second rounder in 2025. Just some key notes as the Leafs proceeded to waive Dzingel, and he was claimed off waivers by the San Jose Sharks. And Arizona can obviously, as I mentioned before, choose either Toronto's third round pick in the 2023 draft or their second round pick in 2025. So a couple years down the road. Now, obviously, the couple big pieces to this trade is Luca, as you and I kind of went over Toronto's worst contracts in all of sports a couple of weeks ago. High on my list was Nick Ritchie, and the Leafs found a way to shed his $2.5 million next season off of their books. So he was signed to this year and next year. He was playing for the Marlies. He was demoted because he wasn't really effective. And Cal Dubas gets out of that contract, which he signed off this offseason in free agency. So it was important for the Leafs, who, as everyone knows, Leafs are definitely cap strapped and they don't have much wiggle room there. So moving that money off the books is key. But also, the Leafs address a need, and that's why this trade is very good for this team because
Yeah.
at the cost of either a second rounder in 2025 or a third round pick next season, the Leafs not only get off the salary cap of Nick Ritchie, but they also bring in Lyubushkin, who is 27 years old. He has a lot of NHL experience so far. He's 180 games played for Arizona. He's not the biggest point producer. I think he only has 19 points over that span. But this is a guy who likes to play with a little bit of grit, a little bit of an edge. And that's something this Leafs team desperately needed. It's something many people have talked about. And not only that, he's capable of making a breakout pass, which is obviously great for when you want to get it up to your forwards quickly with the firepower the Leafs have up top. And as I mentioned, he's benefits or he's better defensively than a lot of Leafs defensemen right now. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what role that they do play him in. One quote I want to highlight, this is from Bill Armstrong, the GM of the Coyotes. He said everybody was looking at him in the league that's kind of making a run for it. He's talking about Lyubushkin here. And what I liked about him is that he brought the same effort every single night and he showed great improvement. His minutes increased this year compared to last year, and he made us a tough team. So his minutes increased about 3 minutes per game, averaging about 18 minutes per game this season. So he fills a need on that Leafs back end, which I mean, we talked about the Leafs needs not too long ago. We both said they definitely need a defenseman or perhaps even two. So this, checks a box there, and it's I think it's a positive move for the Leafs.
Now, is this something you think is going to move the needle with that defense of being a guy who could come up big in the postseason, or did you look at this more as like a complementary piece and one of the smaller pieces, a part of the bigger puzzle that the Leafs are trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, I don't think he's a game changer, but I do think he's the type of player that can excel in the playoffs, as we saw against the Habs and even more recently, like over the weekend against the St. Louis Blues and going back before that when they faced the Calgary Flames. Um, this Leafs team does not succeed against physical opposition. Whenever a team brings that physical aspect of the game against the Maple Leafs, they find a way to shut down some of the top guys. Leafs are exposed. So I think in this trade they get a little bit of that bite, which I think helps them in the postseason playing that playoff style of hockey. So I think it's a piece of many, but it is one that I think does help this team in terms of being a playoff team.
Yeah, our very own Kevin was at the game Saturday, and he said the same thing. As good as this Leafs team is, they still lack that grit, that physicality that you're going to need, especially come playoff time. So hopefully Labushkin can provide some of that. As yeah, he's 27 years old. He did a lot of good things with Arizona, and hopefully he can be that piece to the bigger puzzle here with the Maple Leafs as they look to get into the playoffs and actually make some noise. As before we talk about some of the Leafs defeats and their game tonight. Let's talk about another move that happened. One of the most bizarre moves, as you explained it off the air. The Leafs also acquired veteran goalie Carter Hutton from the Coyotes in exchange for future considerations. But this is a bizarre story in itself, as Mike will let you know what happened afterward.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. So as you mentioned, they traded future considerations for Carter Hutton, so essentially nothing. But the Leafs gave up for Hutton, I think is like 36, 37. He's been battling an injury all year, has a lot of NHL experience in the league. But the interesting thing here is the Leafs are actually going to loan Carter Hutton back to Arizona's farm team, Tucson there, and he's gonna stay with his family. As I mentioned, he's not gonna leave Arizona, so he's not really going anywhere. But the Leafs get that goaltending assurance in case something happens to Jack Campbell or Peter Mrazek down the road, where they can bring in Carter Hutton and shore up their goaltending if something, knock on wood, does happen. So another trade that was actually made mid game. It was announced last night during the Leafs Habs game. So pretty interesting that that keeps happening and yeah, it's good because the MLSE can flex their financial might. What this does is Arizona, who as many people know, don't really have that much money. They shed Carter Hart's $750,000 contract. MLSE steps up and says they'll pay it, and in exchange, we just have this assurance. So I think it's great leverage by MLSE, and I don't know if we'll ever see Carter Hutton in a Leafs or Marlies uniform, but hey, it's assurance.
Yeah, so in the midst of the Leafs making these trades and getting everybody talking, they have lost their last couple of games. Saturday night, they lost to the Blues. That was a tough defeat, and then the head scratcher was the one last night against the Canadians. They were blown out, and I believe Montreal was what -425 on the money line. They were a very big underdog. They won that game outright, and the Leafs all of a sudden have back-to-back losses. What do you expect from this Leafs team after making some trades, coming off a couple of defeats? How will they look tonight against the Blue Jackets? As this will be a game where you want to see them get back to their basics and get back in the win column.
Yeah, so just quickly on that Montreal game, I mean, that was one of the worst games we've seen. This Leafs went down early, and eventually they were trailing that game in the third period 5-0, which I mean against the Habs team that hey, they played better of late. They've played better under Martin St. Louis as their head coach, but it's still a very mediocre. Like it's a bad Habs team. There's no other way to really put that. And Sheldon Keefe kind of said after the game is sometimes you need these types of games as a true wake up. So we'll see how the Leafs respond. I think that game for me, you can kind of just chalk it up as one of those nights. But the interesting stat that I saw are the Leafs are just 1-5 on the road against Canadian teams this season. For me, I think it's because Canadian teams are paying attention to what the Leafs have been doing. And the Leafs right now, they're the talk of Canada. Of course, you can throw the Calgary Flames in there with the way that they've resurged, but other teams know that around the country. And whenever they do face the Leafs, especially in their own barn, I feel like they really circle that one on their calendar and get up for this type of matchup. And I'm not sure if the Leafs were kind of prepared for Montreal to come out in the way that they did, the physicality that they brought and the intensity that they brought overall in a desperate attempt to win that game. For Montreal, that's like a playoff game for them because they don't really have much else to play for. Like you win against the Leafs, the almighty Leafs, as the league kind of perceives them as. It kind of goes a long way in pleasing your fan base there. So I think that for me is what that came down to last night. Now tonight's not going to be much easier. Again, not a very good team in the Columbus Blue Jackets, but over the last 10, things have been pretty even. Leafs are 5-3-2 against the Blue Jackets. Whereas, on the money line here, I'm just taking a look. The Leafs are -230, so decent favorites in this one. Plus 110 on the puck line if you're bold. But if you look at some of the stats going down here, I I like the Blue Jackets just by the numbers here. The Blue Jackets have covered the puck line in each of their last 4 games against the Maple Leafs. The Blue Jackets are playing some dang good hockey right now. They're 5-1 straight up in their last 6 games. They're 6-1 in their last seven against an Eastern Conference opponent. So overall, like it's one of those games by the numbers you kind of stay away from. But the key factor, and I'm interested to hear your take on this, Luca, is how will the Leafs respond after getting blown out against Montreal? Second night of a back-to-back. Labuschagne could be joining the team tonight, so they could get that boost on the back end. Of course, Jake Muzzin went down last night in a scary injury, but Luca, do you think that factors in at all to kind of where you're leaning in this game?
I think it's good that the Leafs have had a little bit of a couple of hiccups, and I am very interested to see how they're going to respond tonight. And if this is a Leafs team that is ready to take that next step and is ready to erase all of those bad narratives about this team, I'm expecting them to go into Columbus and absolutely have a sound performance because this was a team that, let's call it for what it is. They were embarrassed against the Canadians, who are not a very good hockey club. Yes, they have the Leafs number, you could argue, dating back to the postseason, but that's a game that the Leafs absolutely look lifeless. But now you made these trades. You're going to have one of the new guys that you traded for in the lineup. Show people that you can respond to adversity because that's the thing with this Leafs team. They were almost having it too easy, and I was waiting for them to go through a bit of a rough patch just to see how they would respond, which would be similar to a postseason type environment. You want to see them take a couple of punches and see how they're going to come back. And this is a perfect opportunity tonight. You mentioned it. Columbus, they have been very, very good in their last couple of games as a good home team. The Leafs, they're on the road once again. Let's see which Leafs team will step up. Is it going to be the phony team that we're all afraid of seeing in big time moments, or is it going to be the team that can be resilient and finally be clutch when when push comes to shove and things are not going their way? So personally, I'm expecting the Leafs to show up here. I am expecting them to get a hard fought win. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a nitty gritty game, but I do want to see the Leafs respond, and I'm hoping they do that, and we see that tonight.
Yeah, we'll see how this one plays out. As I mentioned, Columbus are not going to be an easy pushover tonight, and the Leafs, on the other hand, look at this. This goes back a couple weeks now. They've lost 4 of the last 6 games. A couple of those games they definitely should have won. So how will they respond? So one thing I want to point out is there's probably not much value tonight on the money line or really the puck line unless you want to go Columbus and you're confident taking Columbus. But where there you could find value is actually the over under in this game. And both teams come into this game hitting the over more times than not. 9 of Toronto's last 11 games have gone over. 5 of their last 6 on the road have gone over. And on the other hand, Columbus here, the total's gone over in 8 of Columbus's last 9 games. So that over under has been hitting pretty dang frequently. And I'm just going to pull up the odds here quickly. The over under right now, I mean, of course, everyone's taking note of that. It's set at 7 goals. That's
That's a
probably the
high
highest
number.
over under that I've seen in an NHL game. It could be one of those games where, you think everything's pointing to over and it just goes under just based on that number. But it's
Yeah.
at plus 110 if you do feel confident that this will be a goal fest. Leafs are starting Jack Campbell tonight, so that probably will limit the goals kind of on their end. If you had Labushkin, maybe that helps as well. Whereas if you go under, it's minus 130. I'm probably leaning under despite all of the numbers in that favor just because I think that's pretty dang high spread. I don't know if we're gonna see a 5-2 or a 4-3 hockey game or a 6-1 hockey game. But I think yeah, I think my gut's telling me to go under there at minus 130.
Yeah, that's a high number, man. 7, like that's something I'm definitely staying away from. And it's funny, for as good as the Leafs have been, covering the over unders as we alluded to on air. The last time I touched an over under was that game against the Penguins, and I lost it. It went under. So I don't know what it is. I can never hit over unders in any sport. So this is one that I would definitely avoid. But yeah, I think you leaning towards the under would be the smart choice here, unless we get an absolute onslaught of goals and the goalie just have an off night. But hey, if you go based on the last couple of games, maybe a lot of people are going to take that over, and they are expecting another sloppy game like that where both teams let up a lot of goals. So we'll see. But I'm staying away from that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the safer play there. But if you're feeling bold with these numbers, all these stats backing you up, The over will, I guess, hit if you go by historically, but I think everyone else is taking note of that, and that over under being set at 7 speaks to the fact that Vegas is ahead of this, is 2 steps ahead of this perhaps, and I'm with you, I'm probably staying away, but if I had to choose, I'm gonna say under tonight. We'll see how that plays out.
All right, again, Leafs take on the Blue Jackets. They're trying to snap a losing streak, and we'll see if they do that tonight. Let's move on now. NBA All Star Weekend was this past weekend, and we're just gonna dive right into it. So, I mean, you look at Friday, we had the celebrity game. I didn't really pay too much attention to that. Then we had All Star Saturday, a couple of cool events there. Then we had the game on Sunday. Now, before we talk about the game on Sunday and Fred VanVleet's involvement, let's talk about Saturday because I have a feeling you put in a bet. I'm pissed off that I did not put in a bet because if you recall, Mike, on this show, when we were looking at the odds, I did say you look at a guy like Carl Anthony Towns, who is 1,000 of having very good long shot odds to ride with because he is a great shooting big man. He coins himself as the best shooting big man. Well, now he's got some hardware to back that statement up. He wins this competition. I am so upset that I didn't even put 20 bucks on that. That Carl Anthony Towns at those odds pulled it off. You would have had a nice payday. The guy with the worst odds wins it as a guy like Fred VanVleet, who was one of the favorites. Or I think right before the competition started, he was slightly, I think he had like the third best odds. I think Trey Young was the favorite, and Kennard actually had some pretty good odds. But Fred VanVleet didn't even make it past the first round, and you had Cat win it all. So did you bet on the 3 point contest? Because sorry, so I did bet on the 3 point contest. I bet Fred VanVleet. I lost that, but I'm upset because I didn't take Carl Anthony Towns. So what were your thoughts to that? And did you make any bets on that event or any of the other events on Saturday?
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, and yeah, actually to kind of spice up All-Star Weekend in general, which I thought was a pretty big letdown overall. I did make quite a decent amount of bets. One of the bets I did make was Fred VanVleet at plus 550, which I think I got decent value, even though he didn't perform as well as he should have. I will say he did beat Kyle Lowry's performance when he first entered the 3 point competition, so whenever it's your first competition in that event, it's never easy to kind of walk away victorious. I was tempted to put a couple bucks on Carl Anthony Towns, and I didn't, just like you, Luca. And hey, like I said, hindsight is sort of 2020 there when we're looking at that. I also put money on CJ McCollum in the 3 point competition. Just a couple bucks, just if it hits, it hits. If not, whatever. It obviously did not hit, even though he did actually do decently in the competition. I think he finished with 19 points and qualified with like 22 or 23. So he was just a couple short. And I think he got cold towards the end. So that was kind of a bummer there. Another thing I was betting on was the skills competition. And if we kind of move on here and look at what Scotty Barnes kind of did in that competition with the rookies there, the rookies are actually the favorite heading into that competition. Me, I picked the Antetokounmpos just because they had the worst odds, and I thought if anything, Giannis can clutch some things up, and they made it close. They made the finals, and um, or they got eliminated, but they went down to that tiebreaker to make the finals, and of course it was the Cavaliers with Evan Mobley and I think Darius Garland and Jared Allen were on that team, and they ended up winning that skills competition. So Scotty Barnes let me down there, and overall, Scotty Barnes' weekend and as a whole was a pretty big letdown. Definitely had some moments where he might not live down for a while. Obviously, I'm referring to that layup in the rookies competition or whatever that competition was, where he couldn't hit a layup from 4 or 5 times in a row.
That was embarrassing.
Uh,
That put the franchise back a couple years
Yeah, yeah,
at the All Star
his
game.
value, his stock definitely dropped after this All-Star weekend. But good to see him out there. But one guy who did impress me on the Raptors, Luca, was Precious Achiuwa. Precious had a really good showing in the rookie sophomore game. He in the final he went off, and it was kind of tainted because one of his last plays, he looked off. I forget who it was he looked off, but it was a knockdown. Desmond Bain. He looked off Desmond Bain, who was just a knockdown shooter from beyond the arc. And Precious Achiuwa decides to take a contested three in clutch time of the final game, and he airballs it. And immediately Precious turns to Desmond Bain. He's like, my bad. Because he knew that was just a terrible play. No matter how hot you are, if you have like a lethal 3-point shooter and you're Precious Achua, you pass that ball 10 times out of 10. And that happened. Of course, it was a talking point after the game, but I thought Precious overall, I think he raised his stock in this competition. I think the league's taking notice of kind of what the Raptors got there and that Kyle Lowry deal. And I think, all things considered, Precious Achiuwa's second year in the league. This is a guy that might not be talked about overall enough in the Raptors young gun kind of approach because you have people that sort of overshadow Precious Achiuwa with this team, and I think Precious Achiuwa has a really high ceiling, and he showed that a little bit at this game. What did you make of some of the Raptors' performance there, Luca?
Out of the Raptors, Achua definitely impressed me the most. He was balling out at one point, and you know what? I'm okay with him taking that shot. It's at the end of the day, you're there to have fun, and I like that he kind of went out of his way to potentially make a big time shot. It's only going to help his confidence moving forward. So I was okay with that little bit of a mishap at the end, but yeah, Achua definitely stood out to me over Van Vliet and Barnes. Let's just break them down quickly here from my perspective. Yeah, Scotty Barnes had a rough weekend. I mean, he had a rough start to his weekend, and then when he did have the go and the skills challenge, he did have a nice dunk. And that dunk ended up being the dunk of the night. A little bit more on that later on. But yeah, so that was his highlight. Fred Van Vliet, I would say, would be ahead of him. He obviously didn't have the best of 3-point shootouts, but it was his first time there. Obviously, he had the jitters. It is what it is. Just to have Freddie represent the Raptors in that moment on that stage under those lights, that was great to see. And for the actual All-Star game, I know he didn't play a whole ton. He only played like 9 minutes, but he made way for a guy who I thought stole the show and saved All-Star weekend, and that's Stephen Curry. So I
Yeah.
can't blame what happened there. Fred Van Vliet obviously made way to Stephen Curry, who's getting a bunch of minutes, and it was clearly on Steph's mind to get that record, which he did fall short of for the most points in an All-Star game. And yeah, Precious Achiuwa number one. I really liked what I saw from him in that game. It was great to see him be a part of these festivities, and he's only a second-year player. Just being around some of those other big-time names, it's only going to help his confidence. So now let's talk about the All-Star weekend as a whole. This is my take. Friday, I don't really care about. And then you move on to NBA All-Star Saturday. That overall was very disappointing. The best contest, which has been so for the past couple of years, I would say since 2016, has been the 3-point contest. The dunk contest has been absolutely forgettable. And it's a shame how much it has fallen from grace. I mean, we were all spoiled with arguably the best dunk contest ever in 2016 with Gordon and Zach LaVine. And since that, I wouldn't be able to recall many noteworthy dunks. There were a few, I'm not going to be super unfair, but overall, the dunk contest has been a dud. And that one on Saturday night, Mike, that was probably the worst one ever. You can make a case for that. That was very bad. And the worst part is these guys were taking like 5 to 8 attempts to make these dunks. It was the slam dunk attempt contest. Like it was just horrible. We had seen dunks that we have seen before. The one guy I'll give a bit of a pass to was the winner in Obi Toppin. I thought he did overall a good job, but just watching some of those attempts, man, it was absolutely brutal. So we should definitely change the format once and for all. And maybe you end with the 3-point contest, which is funny because they did ask Obi Toppin that after he won his award. The reporter asked Toppin if they should end with the 3-point contest instead of the dunk contest, basically telling him
Wow.
to his face, yeah, the dunk contest just sucked. I think it's time to make that change, or you got to start bringing in legitimate dunkers. If it's not going to be NBA guys because they don't want to get injured, like a John Morant, etc., bring in world-class dunkers who do that for a living. You got to give the fans more of a show. You got to close out Saturday night with more of an emphasis than what we got, because that was just a snoozer. And then in terms of the actual game, I'll admit it was great. I enjoyed it. And to me, the actual All-Star game for the NBA is the best out of any other sports league, and it's not even close. It used to be baseballs, but then once they took out the stipulation of the winner gets home court advantage in the World Series, I don't care about that All-Star game anymore. But you got to admit, Mike, I mean, that game, it was fun to watch, especially in the second half after that what felt like an hour-long halftime show, which was great to see all those legends there, and we saw the LeBron and Michael Jordan moment. That second half was awesome, especially when Stephen Curry went on a tear. It was like watching a video game. This dude was hitting threes from everywhere. That really uplifted the crowd. And then in that final quarter where they set that target score, which has been one of the best changes they've ever made, things got real. Guys started playing defense. Guys started making plays. You saw Embiid wanting the ball down low. You saw guys like Jared Allen making plays on him. And then we got a game winner. I mean, we got a game winner in an all-star game that got me off my feet. I'm not going to lie. And how fitting of a game winner was that? LeBron makes it in Cleveland, and DeMar DeRozan, who's still petrified over what LeBron did to him, is the first guy to celebrate with LeBron after he hits that game winner. So the game was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. But as far as Saturday night went, it needs a lot of work, especially that dunk contest.
That was the one big change that I liked, Luca, is that target score. I think even in the rookie challenge, I thought that made the game a lot more exciting. As you saw, the first game people were kind of taking it easy, but by the time the second, third game kind of rolls around, everyone's locked in and they don't want to lose. Everyone wants to kind of go far in this. The competitor in them kind of comes out when you have that target score and kind of even if it's the last couple of possessions, it makes the game so much more interesting. And I think that was still the case with the game on Sunday overall. Yeah, I thought the game was all right. Like for me, I think All-Star games as a whole just need to be abolished. I'm just not a fan of All-Star games. I think the NBA did do a little bit better with this one. As you mentioned, Steph Curry kind of, if there wasn't Steph Curry there, I'm not sure how into it kind of I would have been overall, but Steph jacking up threes, kind of turning away before his three pointers are made. The whole spectacle that kind of was Steph Curry was kind of what glued me to the screen there, at least, heading into kind of that final quarter there. And of course, LeBron finishing it with that turnaround jumper that didn't look like it was going in whatsoever. And then somehow found a way in down. And I thought that was really fitting that it ended on that note. But still, I didn't go away feeling like, hey, that's a moment that we'll remember forever. I mean, it probably is going to be a moment that gets replayed quite often, but to me, there's that asterisk beside it still that it was in an All-Star game where, for the most part, people were kind of taking it easy. And yeah, I don't know if I'm being a Debbie Downer here and kind of bitter. I just don't find pleasure in watching NBA All-Star games or All-Star games in general anymore.
Yeah, I was ready to have that same take, but that game saved it for me. Like I said, that second half, I think I was still on the high of seeing all of those NBA greats being celebrated like that. And then when you had Steph Curry take over in that third quarter, you're absolutely right. If that doesn't happen, I'm not invested in that game because that kind of segued into a very competitive and close fourth. And then that's when guys started playing defense. And yeah, that saved it for me. If that second half was not as close as it was, I probably would be saying the same things right now that all All-Star games, all All-Star weekends should be abolished. But I still got to give the NBA the benefit of the doubt. I mean, their Saturday night has fallen from grace mightily, but their actual game, it's definitely the best overall All-Star game out of any other league. And that's saying something considering there's nothing on the line. So that target score definitely did help. But hey, overall, it was a good weekend for some of those guys. They got to get some time off. They got to enjoy a little bit. And the NBA season is going to be back and running starting Thursday. And the Raptors will be back running on Friday. They're going to have a very busy second half of the season. And just very quickly, I do want to mention this. Goran Dragic signs with the Brooklyn Nets. So those two games coming up, there's a lot more added to it for the Raptors to try to win those games because those games are coming up. I believe it's the 28th and March 1st where the Raptors are taking on the Nets, and they're going to be taking on a team that right now they would be playing if the playoffs started today in the play-in. And of course, Goran Dragic, a guy who joined a team with higher ambitions.
Yeah, I mean, I think Goran Dragic is going to be one of the biggest villains when it comes to Brooklyn returning to Scotiabank Arena. By that time, they should also have Ben Simmons probably back into the lineup. And this is a team you definitely don't want to face come the start of the year, start of the playoffs. So hopefully, either Brooklyn turns it up. Actually, I do hope Brooklyn turns it up because I placed a bet on them midstream like a couple shows ago. So hopefully Brooklyn turns it up and wins the Atlantic Division there for me. And yeah, I think overall, like, it's a move that improves Brooklyn's depth, something they probably needed slightly. And yeah, it is what it is. I mean, Goran Dragic never wanted to be here. It just, it sucks to see him go to a competitor. So I wished him the worst of luck.
Yeah, it sucks because I know how good Dragic can be still. And I think he is going to be a very good addition for that Nets team. And I really do like that bet. I said it then and I'll say it now. I really think the Brooklyn Nets are going to turn this thing up. And Kyrie Irving actually said that in a Twitch stream last night. They were playing. And he said, look out for us in the second half. And rightfully so. Ben Simmons is going to join the team soon, like you said, making a big addition of Dragic. If they're healthy, they're still my pick to come out of the East. So we'll see how the Nets and the Raptors do in the second half of the season. Okay, let's get to our best bet now of the night. Mike comes in at 17 and 13. I come in at 22 and 8, and I'm coming in hitting my first ever hockey bet on Friday. So, Mike, let's get in the win column, buddy. What do you got for us tonight?
Wild, yeah. I think I'm on a little bit of a two-night losing streak here, and I picked the Toronto Ultra over the weekend. They let me down surprisingly. They went 0-2 in both of their matchups, which kind of turned a few heads in the Call of Duty League scene because the Ultra is seen as one of the favorites there overall. So we'll see if they can make that up this week as they play their first major, but we'll touch on that later in the week. For me, I'm going back to what's worked for me, and that's the UEFA Champions League matchups. Today, Chelsea is taking on Lille. Lille is Jonathan David's team, Canadian international there. And I'm actually not going to pick a winner in this because I didn't see much value. Chelsea are the heavy favorites playing at home at Stamford Bridge. But I am taking both teams to score in this one at plus 150. I do that because, well, A, you have Jonathan David there. Lille is capable of scoring. They've shown that against good opposition in the French league against PSG, for example, where they definitely can find a way to find the back of the net. And I think there's good value at plus 150. And these two teams have played twice recently. Both of those games ended in 2-1 defeats for Lille. So Lille has shown that they can still find the back of the net against Chelsea, and I think they will find a way to score in this one. So at plus 150, I'm taking Lille.
I like that. That's a little bit of a creative bet. We've never done that on this show. I think taking teams to score or props like that. So yeah, I like that a lot. And yeah, we do have Champions League action, which is always exciting. I forgot what day it was. That's what happens when you come out of a long weekend. For
I
my
know.
pick, I'm going to go back to the ice. I'm actually going to take a team that I expect to bounce back. We talked about them earlier. Going to be a homer here. Give me the Maple Leafs money line. I think they will get the job done, and I'm not touching that over under like I alluded to. But I think they do enough to win against a team that Mike thinks can come up big in the spot and possibly play a bit of a spoiler here. So I will go against that grain. I'm going with the Leafs money line.
All right. Oh, I mean, I think that's I'll call it it, man. That's a safe bet. Minus what? Minus 225,
It's
230 right
minus
now.
270 right now, I believe.
Minus 270. You
Robbie
better
is
hope that hits, Luca. You're playing it safe.
Yeah, this one I'm playing it safe. That's the thing, man. I gotta play. Hey, there's no rules, right? You just gotta win. No one's
You
telling
just
us
gotta
to make
win.
these long shot bets. You just gotta win. So I'm taking that minus 270.
There you go. And hey, you've been hitting recently, so if you hit, you'll at least make somebody some money, even if it's not the turnaround you've been giving up recently. But yeah, I think the Leafs will find a way to win tonight. But don't be surprised if Columbus finds a way to also surprise the Leafs in this one. So I'm not too confident as I normally am against it, at least in this spot. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. Hopefully we come back and you're talking about a 23-8 record, Luca, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, maybe I'm
Just
being selfish. I'm
ridiculous.
just looking at that record and I'm playing it way too safe. So we'll see. Yeah, if you want to make more money, definitely bet on Columbus. But I think the Leafs win tonight. So we'll see what happens there. But that's going to conclude another great edition of Toronto Today coming out of the Family Day long weekend. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what your thoughts have been on the show. You can find this podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. You can follow us all over social media. Mike and I come to you Monday through Friday with Toronto sports and more. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you all again tomorrow.